young people around the world want to see change. Join your co-hosts, William, Anastasia, and George, as they speak to young leaders from around the world on their stories, their struggles, and most importantly, their incredible impact. In season 2 of this podcast, be ready to get inspired. This is where action begins, and this is the Young Changemakers podcast.
Okay, Sara, welcome to the Young Changemakers podcast. It's incredible to have yourself as a core member of the Global Changemaker team, and have been since back in 2010. Am I right? That's when you first joined the Global Changemaker family.
Yes, no, and thank you for inviting me. This has been a project that has been very, very close to my heart. I feel that this podcast is amazing, an amazing way to just tell the stories of changemakers. And yes, I did join Global Changemakers in 2010, so almost a decade ago. And yeah, I've been just, involved ever since.
Yeah, no, I was fortunate enough to meet you, Sara, at the last year's summit, and what an incredible week that was for myself and all the fellow change makers. We learned so much, but I think what's more important is just to be welcomed into this global network of young, passionate, and like-minded people, all hoping to create positive change in their communities. So, throwing it on to you, did you ever think that you would become disengaged in the Global Changemaker family that decade ago?
I'm not sure. I would say yes, but because I'm already super involved. But back then, I did felt that energy that you're talking about, to just be in front of people that are like-minded, have been doing stuff already for their own communities or for communities that are close to their hearts. And that's just amazing. I did talk a lot to the team members way back when, and I wanted to get involved. So I decided to apply to become a peer facilitator. So in our events, we usually have the team members and a main facilitator, but we also have peer facilitators, which are members of our network that come back and facilitate the sessions and are in charge of doing work in the summits. So I applied next year, and in 2011 I was a peer facilitator for the first time. And then I still was involved with some team members, and we just talked about how I did do one of the, they were used to called community action projects. And what we did was that we had there in the first summit where I joined, I met other change makers that wanted to do something on the human rights, but specifically in children's rights area. So we ran a project in 8 different countries. So each one of us, depending on the country that we were on, focused on different children's rights. So for example, for me in Colombia, it was very important to focus on how were children involved in war, and how their rights were perpetrated. I'm not sure what the right word is, but what happens with children in war. So what we did some conferences and some presentations in schools and tried to learn more about it, but there were all these different ways of tackling this particular issue. And it was something really nice, because we got funding from GCM, and that is something that still remains. So we still give small grants to our change makers for them to develop their project, and they can be really small projects. And there are some projects that have been, for example, I have a lot of friends from GCM that have developed their own projects 10 or 12 years ago, and now they are still doing the same project that is now a whole organization or something of that sort, which I think is very exciting. So just getting involved and learning about this beautiful community got me thinking that I wanted to give back not only to other people, but to this particular community. So when Global Changemakers became an independent organization, and it's really nice, and I don't think that much of the Changemakers realize, is that our team is super cool in a way that we make decisions together. So it is not like in a traditional organization where you have a boss and you have to, there's some sort of hierarchy between people. It's just more about, okay, I want to do a project I want to do a mentorship program. That was an idea of a change maker. And then we said, okay, how would it work? What would it entail? What do we need? And then it was done, So it's more about how can we do stuff rather than you can do this or you cannot do this. I'm not sure if I'm making any sense, but that's sort of.
I think you've lived the full life cycle of the Global Changemakers experience. As you mentioned, first joining as a participant in 2010, and now returning, which a lot of people in the network have done as a peer facilitator. I want to ask this question now, like, how was the experience as a participant? How did it differ coming back as a peer facilitator?
Well, it is very different because when you come as a participant, you really don't know what to expect. And I was very, very shy in the first summit that I attended because I was sort of overwhelmed, because I felt that a lot of change makers did so much that I did from what I did back then. And I was a little, I felt a bit of an imposter syndrome, if you could call it like that. And then coming back as a facilitator, I learned that maybe I was not the best of the best, or that my impact was not huge, and it didn't really matter, because what it actually mattered is how can I just help other people achieve their best, right? So if we're gonna talk about some issues, okay, how can I conduct this session? How can I facilitate it? How can I coordinate it so that they achieve the goal of that session? And that made it a little simpler. And of course, being a facilitator also means that you're a team member, right? And that sort of it's a different sort of friendship that you develop there. And as facilitators, we get trained before, so it's really nice, because I used to be trained when I was a facilitator, and now I am in charge of training the new facilitators that come in, which I think is a very, very fun job to do.
Definitely. And the facilitators had they did such an incredible job. To give a bit of background, 6 young change makers arrived at the conference center, which is on top of this mountain in Switzerland. And you don't know what you're in for, but the first few hours, they're really welcoming and they engage you immediately. And then from the get-go, you're learning so many new skills. So it's definitely an important role, and I think you've done an excellent job in now training the trainers, so to speak, Sara.
Now
that we've had a bit of a chat about what the Global Changemaker Network is and how much impact it's had over the last decade, I want to throw the ball back into your court. And so your main passion is surrounding youth and youth education, and you mentioned in the context of youth and their rights in war, how do you think youth are such a key component towards sustainable development and in tackling some of our biggest issues?
We as youth have a huge role in everything. We do not realize how much power we have until we see how many likes a really stupid video in TikTok has, right? So you see, if we can take our time to look at a stupid video, we can also move masses. And when I mentioned that I first became a global change maker in 2010, it was very close to when this sort of it was more Facebook and Twitter back then, but this was a time when the internet exploded in the social media realm. So when I realized the million things we could do, and this was all youth, and this was all people that wanted to. So you remember the Arab Spring? I think that many of the people in our audience were very young, but it was all done via internet, and it was something that it was a big issue because it was a time when we realized that okay, we cannot vote directly, maybe, but we do have a voice. And I see in the recent movements, such as the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, and so on and so forth, the youth voice has been crucial to having things changed. And I do not think that they are 100% changed, not at all. But I have seen huge multinational corporations changing their whole logos and names because they saw that we as young people are not only consumers, but we are active citizens, and we are thinking about what to buy, when, from whom, right? So I do believe, and in this particular, I don't even know what's the biggest issue in Colombia right now, but I feel that, and going back to one of the, I think it was one of the first guests of this podcast, Daniel Macmillan Bosco Voynick, which is GCM and a personal friend. He's one of the smartest person that I know ever. Yeah. And he talks a lot about connection, right? So rather than we thinking about individual issues, we should talk about how those quote unquote issues connect and interact with each other. So of course we can say that in Colombia we still have poverty issues, we have education issues, big education issues. And now I'm currently, well, my family has had a nursery school for I think 36 years this year, and I've been consulting for them and working with them for a really long time. And what we've been seeing today, and one of our biggest worry right now, is what is going on with early childhood in this pandemic and in the confinement. And this is something that really concerns me, because the first 1,000 days of a child will tell you a lot about the development of a country. So I do feel that that's one of the issues that needs immediate care. And I'm talking about this COVID pandemic and this COVID crisis, because we're currently in lockdown, and we do feel that there's a need to pay attention to the youngest. And of course, the youth are also very affected. When I think a lot about the teenagers and how they, I mean, when you're a teenager, your life depends on what your social group is doing or liking, right? So I do feel that it's a really tough time for children and youth, and I don't think there's enough attention on that. I do realize that this is a serious health issue, but we cannot. I mean, it's also a mental health issue, because confinement is something that is new to us and probably to a lot of generations. I don't think anyone can say, no, this is something that, whatever, this we'll get through this and nothing's going to happen. I do not think. I think a lot of things have been happening, and we need more attention in that. So I'm sorry that I derailed from your main question, but
that's really interesting, Sara, because I think it's an important conversation to have. Like, what is the next generation going to be able to do to solve some of our biggest issues? And before they try and identify the issues that they want to solve or what's important to them personally, first of all, one thing to unravel is how the hell do they understand their own belief system when there's so much information and bombardment coming at them from all these different social media platforms? It's really difficult now to funnel and channel this information. So I think the work that you're doing with some of the youth there in Colombia is critical. And yeah, I'm glad that the Global Changemakers network has really focused on the issue of how everything is connected, because it's so incredible, it's so important in my field of agriculture. You know, it's so connected to people's social standpoint, like whether you're a meat eater or vegetarian. It's not just whether you like vegetables or meat. There's a whole belief system behind it. So it's important that we take time to focus on our personal belief systems and understand
Exactly.
just how to unravel this beast that the sort of social movement is. So yeah, I'm glad we got deep into that. But going on, I think given the current climate, Sara, it's been a difficult year, 2020, for many people. How have you personally and the GCM team dealt with the challenges that have arisen as a result of the COVID pandemic?
I think that Global Changemakers is very privileged as an organization, because we, without knowing it, we were preparing to take a lot of what we were doing online. So for example, just last year we launched the Changemaker School, which is an online platform available in our website, and we have there different courses. So we have facilitation tools for change makers, and which is an excellent toolkit and an excellent way of learning about facilitation. And what I mean with facilitation is how not much leading, but coordinating a group in order to get them to do something, any group work that you would think of. So we have videos for energizers, icebreakers, and games to get groups to focus, or to just get energized, or to meet each other, that sort of thing. And I think that's an amazing thing. And something that we have been working on for these past few months is how to do the same, but in a virtual setting. Because this year we did our first virtual summit, and it was a complete success. I don't want to brag too much, but it was, we were not expecting that it would go so smoothly. It was just absolutely amazing the way people responded. We had experts in all the panels, and we had a lot of people joining in live or watching the recordings, and it was an excellent exercise. And and there were a lot of organizations asking us, how did you do it? How did you choose your platform? How do you manage an online meeting? So they asked us to sort of consult on the topic, and we said, this is information that we have available, and we want to take it into the world. So we're going to launch this very soon. This is something that has been on the works in this pandemic. We also launched the project management course, which is a huge effort on how to, everything that you need to know if you're starting your project, or if you have already started but you want to sort of organize yourself a little bit better. So how to lead teams, how to manage them, how to work on your pitch, or for example, how to even create your vision, right? Very simple, very nice, and you can do it in your own time. And we're offering something that I think it's quite innovative, which is that we offer online office hours. So the teachers will actually connect in specific time slots in the month, and you can connect and ask them direct questions, and they're very close. So they will give you your email, and you can, and this is something that separates Global Changemakers from a lot of organizations. This is something that is for youth, from youth. So it's everything. So you're not going to have a teacher that might have a lot of experience, but do not actually understand what is it like to not being able to raise funding, or that sort of thing. So these things that can you can only understand if you've been through the process recently, right? So I believe that it's something really, really cool. We were preparing from last year to move, because what we thought is that we were already reaching some people, but we wanted to reach more people. How do we bring this to much more people? Because our summits were for 60 change makers, right? And we wanted to have thousands or millions of youth just learning about the things that we've learned for all these years. And something that we're currently using, and I'm super glad that you mentioned about your Spanish, is that we are starting to bring more content in Spanish and later on in Portuguese. So we realized that, for example, in Latin America, to speak a second language is already a privilege, and we are offering everything in English. So we just launched our first mentorship program cycle in Spanish. So you could apply in Spanish and have a Spanish-speaking mentor, which would just accompany you throughout the whole process in your own language, which I think is very valuable.
Terrific.
Also, we're gonna be launching some webinars as well in Spanish and in Portuguese, so that we reach more people that do not speak this language or that feel much more comfortable in their own language, which I think is one of the things that I have sort of pushed the team to do over the years, as well as Gabby, because we come from these countries and we know that we speak English, but most of the people here don't. So
yo no tengo español, Sara. That's correct?
Me encanta.
I know next year my Spanish will be so good that I'll apply in Spanish, and then but you'll be
Brilliant.
quick to pick up. No, that's really incredible, because it is difficult for people who English is their second language to come in to an environment, and hold the confidence they might typically have. So no, excellent work, Sara. That's great. My next question, and one which I'm excited to ask you, is given that you've been involved in the Young Changemakers network for the last decade, you've come across many talented, driven, and extremely ambitious young people. Have you identified a core set of skills or personality traits in the youth that you've worked with?
That's an interesting question. I've never thought about that before. But I guess it's easier if I explain the selection process that we've been doing for the events so far, because that's a way in which we sort of find the new change makers. So the first thing that we say over and over is that global change makers are not talkers, right? We're doers. So you're gonna find a lot of people that have been taught to talk, right? To sell themselves in a way, to say how amazing they are. But then you look at what they're actually doing, and it's not so much, right? And I don't want to say that if you're a speaker or if you do webinars, I'm not trying to say that. I'm saying if you try to sell yourself all the time, but you're not actually doing anything, you just volunteer for an hour and you're saying you helped like 1 million people. I don't know. It's just something that we say, that we like people that like doing stuff, going around their own communities or communities that are close to them and seeing what they can do to help the issues that encounter. So I would say that's the first, what do you call it, core value that we look in change makers. We're doers, not talkers. Something else is a sort of resilient, positive energy. So even though we're not always saying everything's perfect, everything's going all right, because we've seen the news, and I mean, I personally try not to, but whenever you turn on the news and you read a newspaper, you just there's a lot of things that are wrong in this world, but change makers just look at those things and say, okay, what is my personal role in this thing that is happening, right? And how am I doing it? So a sense of responsibility, social responsibility, and a commitment to learn. So a much more expansive way of thinking about the issue. So okay, now I'm thinking right now about certain change makers in particular that have had their organizations that started as project for many years, and then something happened, but they didn't say, okay, that was that was what I did, and I'm gonna drop it out. They say, okay, how else can I tackle the same issue? Or now there's a new issue. How now I can move with the times, right? So that's sort of I'm thinking about actually an Australian change maker that he founded a really cool organization with another change maker, and they used to only involve in team sports, right? So they would teach values through sports, and now they're moving towards something that is so they still do sports, but they also are thinking about, okay, now people are talking about meditation. What is that? How can we teach children to meditate, right? And I think that's a really cool way of seeing things. Sports is still something that people like, but if there's something new that can work, let's try it out, right?
Sure.
I guess.
To be like a bit more open-minded and try and solve this problem. Through a different lens, because these problems are so interconnected. So it's good to approach them with different solutions.
Hi there. We hope you're enjoying this episode so far. We just wanted to let you know that we're on social media at WeAreGCM. And don't hesitate to follow us. And if you'd like to support us further, we also have a Patreon page. Type in Global Changemakers and decide which tier is best for you. And now, on with the rest of the episode.
Do you personally have any advice for youth who might be either listening to this podcast or thinking there's some issues in their community that they really want to contribute towards solving? Do you have any sort of advice on how they can, first of all, start to tackle those projects and then also empower people around them?
There's this, because I was a little lost, quote unquote, in my life, in terms of I liked a lot of things and I was passionate about a lot of things. So I was doing for a little while, I was baking cupcakes, and at the same time I was working with Global Changemakers, working for a sustainability consulting firm, and also so I studied law, but I'm also finishing my psychology study, and at some point everything happened at the same time, and I was a little what do you call it? I don't know. I took a step back and said, okay, what is it that I'm doing? What is it that connects every single thing that I'm doing right now? And I realized that is a commitment to serve. So we talk about service in a, I don't know, it's sometimes service is sometimes thought of as sort of charity, or like service to others is something negative. But I realized that while I was baking, I didn't do it because I liked the way the cupcakes were, right? To look at them. But I like to serve to others the cupcakes, and they would say, these are really nice and I like them. I studied law and then psychology because I wanted to help people, right? I wanted to serve them. And that's also why I do. I guess with Changemakers, that's a super easy connection to do. But I guess find a way to serve in whatever you end up doing in your life, I guess would be my advice, if I can give you any. But you're probably already doing something, but find that way of serving others, which can we need to change the system. I cannot be more convinced of this, And especially because this whole craziness of this crisis has opened our eyes, sort of, because we as change makers already knew about climate change, and we already were working towards solving a lot of things. But then this crisis that has been going on in every single corner, or at least almost every single corner in the world, has made us realize that we either work together or we don't even know where to begin to think about what's gonna happen.
Definitely, that's a really important point. Like, inherently, I think humans are all social creatures, and we get the most joy and fulfillment out of helping a family member, a loved one, or a complete stranger. But I think no matter who you are, like, everyone wants to see people succeed and be happy and do well. So I feel a sense of movement in that direction. But I really think there's been a lot of pressure on the big corporate world and big companies to start to look at their social impact and shorten the connection between the business world and the consumer, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And we've seen this sort of hashtag of buy local. I mean, we activists have been doing this for a really long time, but now we see people that have never been involved with any social or environmental project ever, and now they're saying, hey, buy local, or hey, these are products that are more environmentally friendly, to say the least, right? Or hey, I used to buy from a huge supermarket, now I want to buy fruits and vegetables from my local farmer, right? I've seen that shift with people who have never cared. So I do believe that there are things that are gonna be moved, but I do hope that we keep a lot of practices that we learned in this crisis.
I think it's a lot of people often say that it takes a crisis or a big event to change your paradigm, which is like your world, your set of beliefs. I'll give one example, but like a lot of farmers here in Australia are quite conventional and stick to old habits of applying synthetic fertilizers and chemicals. There's a few farmers that people have gotten to hear their story, and one in particular, his farm was burnt out by a bushfire. As you might know, Australia has a lot of big bushfires in our summer. And he was a conventional farmer, and he was running out of hope. He was losing financially, physically. He was running out of energy, and this bushfire wiped out his whole property, and he also got burnt himself in the fire.
Oh God!
So it was after that event that he realizes he has to change his practices. And he's gone on. His name is Colin Size, to invent this new way of farming called pasture cropping. But it was just, I think that's a good example. Like, it takes a sort of a disruption or a huge event to be a catalyst for change. And I think a lot of people are now saying they've changed how they view things, and the COVID has definitely made that apparent in our day-to-day lives.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of things that we need to look at. I mean, for example, for women, we've been screaming for equal pay and for our rights and so on and so forth. But I do not believe that a lot of men realize this was like the difference between the work that women do and men do are so different. If they weren't in the situation of this crisis, because I've seen how, I don't know, how my mom and my dad and my mother-in-law and my father-in-law are interacting in this, because who's going to be in charge of the cleaning, because we usually have some help, or how are we going to, or people that I know that have children, so how are you going to take care of the children, but plus do your regular work and clean the house, and and this has sort of I don't know if a lot of people even saw this, but I have seen people that are sort of wearing different glasses to see life and what actually happens and what are some inequalities that actually exist. So they're not made up. They're not something that are apparent. They do happen. So I am actually glad that this is something that we're looking at from a different perspective, I guess. Of course, we always need to check ourselves in terms of privilege, and that's a huge one, because and I have to speak from my own point of view, but I know the opportunities that I've had, and I don't want to be blind to different experiences, right? And I'm sometimes very afraid to talk about certain issues when I know that I haven't experienced them directly, but I just want to be, what do you call it, an amplifier of what people are going through.
Yeah. But it's difficult to talk about and emphasize with people who have gone through different experiences with you. I think if you sort of surround yourself with people who come from different walks of life, and that's what the Global Changemakers community does. It's when I've connected with refugees, with people who have been in civil war, and here I am in Australia. Never ever would consider what that would be like, living like that. But just being able to like talk with those people and connect with them and understand their values has been really eye-opening. So I'm going to ask probably one more question, Sara. Just unfortunately we are running out of this time, but what does the future hold in store for the GCM team? And can you shed light and give us a bit of an insight into some new projects or initiatives which you guys are currently working on?
Well, I believe that Global Changemakers will continue growing. We are thinking of ways in which we can interact more within the community, because we already have the mentorship program. We have the Changemaker School, which is also a way in which we interact with the community. But we're thinking about how can we interact more and how can we bring that knowledge within the network so that everyone can work together towards something bigger. So I already told you about the sort of new projects that we're gonna be having, like the Changemaker School is gonna have new courses coming up. I hope really, really soon, and I hope that by when this call will be released on the podcast, then we will have it launched already, but you never know when these things are gonna happen. We will have much more classes in the Changemaker School. We will have more mentorship cycles in different languages. And we do, like, I want to really emphasize that, because we do want more people to get involved in different languages with us. So if, for example, you think that you have a really cool thing that you want to talk about in our webinars, just contact us, please. And I hope, George, that we can leave my email on the maybe on the notes, in the show notes, so that people can write and say, hey, I feel that I have this, I am an expert, or even I have been very interested in, I don't know, project management, and I want to do something in Spanish or in Portuguese, or maybe in another of those languages that you want to share. I think it's a great opportunity that you can work with us. There's also a program called the Outreach Volunteers, which is an amazing project, also from one of our team members that one day said, hey, this is how we can involve more people with us. So it's a volunteer position in which you help us share our things, and you get out of sharing and out of participating in different things that we do, you get some discounts for our courses, or you can get, for example, something that I think is really cool, you can get some calls with our alumni, for example. So you can sort of ask them questions, and through the project management, or you can schedule one-on-ones if you have a particular person in our network that you want to meet. So I think that's also something really cool. And yeah, I could go on and on about what we're thinking. And we have, this is something that I love about the Changemakers team, is that we're all very creative, and we're all coming up with new things that, that we want to try, and we actually try them. We just did an open discussion, a workshop on Black Lives Matter and a little bit about discrimination. And we think that we're going to do different workshops on this, not only in this topic, but to see how it plays out. So if we want to do some more on different topics, and that's something. So I would just ask you to stay tuned to our social media, our webpage. We have so many things. Whenever somebody asks me, where can I see the information of Global Changemakers, I say just go to the website. It's super beautiful, easy to navigate, and you can learn a lot about what our projects are, what we're working on. And yeah, I guess I could speak for hours about this, but that's sort of what's coming up.
The great thing about the platform and the website, there's a tool for everyone to use. Whether you're searching to improve your communication skills or project management, it's there. And if it's not, you can definitely reach out and find someone who will help you with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, please, if you're listening, reach out to Sara or the network, and I'm sure there's a room and space for you to learn or contribute your knowledge in your specialized field or an area you're really passionate about. So yeah, exciting things ahead, and I'm really excited to keep close tabs on the projects and course offerings and webinars that are going to be released by you guys.
Thank you, George.
So Sara, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today. I felt like I've just spent an hour in a washing machine. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to catching up and keeping in the loop with the new project.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for inviting me, and I do hope to keep on interacting with you and the rest of this beautiful community of Global Changemakers.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Remember that you can help us have a greater impact by sharing this and encouraging everybody on your social media to take a listen. If you want to reach out, remember that the contact of the co-host is down below in the show notes, or feel free to do it on social media at WeAreGCM. We will be very happy to talk to you and answer any of your questions. Also, remember to follow us and to subscribe to this podcast. See you in the next episode. Take care.